This is our multifamily and more COVID-19 investor panel. It was brought out as a 4-week series. This is the last part of it. It was brought up as a way to talk through the challenges that this pandemic are having economically on different types of businesses. So Phil and Nick started out with us the first 2 weeks. We've added in Mr. Bug, Michael Bug, who, again, they'll all introduce themselves, but they all run different businesses that they'll explain here in just a moment. And this week is particularly interesting because we are officially after when most would have their late clause in their lease. So it's interesting to see what's happening with rents. I have some theories on this I'll share, and I'll get all of your opinions. And then we've got a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about. Refinancing, virtual underwriting or due diligence, contractors and working in this environment, what that might mean, 1031s. And then I've got a what if round that if we can get to it, maybe we won't even get to it, but a what if round that we'll go through to try to help, everybody kind of think through, okay, if I were going to do this, what does that mean? How would that impact me as an investor? And then I'd love to get all of your takes on how this has changed your strategy or management of or whatever as an investor. So we'll talk through all of that stuff as well. We are live in the Michigan group, so if you're wanting to watch somewhere, it's there. But let's start with this. Let's do a round of intros. I'm going to start, and Phil, I think I want to get specifically with you. So I'm going to leave you for last here in a second. But to my left, Michael Bug, why don't you introduce yourself and what you do?
Hey everyone, my name is Mike. I am up in Saskatoon, Canada, and I have a sort of 2 distinct portfolios, one of single family homes with basement suites, and then also a multi-family portfolio. And I exclusively do this full-time, real estate investing.
His neighbor is a polar bear on one side and Santa Claus on the other side, right?
You betcha.
I think that's his 2 neighbors. By the way, before we keep going, I forgot this, but for the chat, I would love to hear where everybody's calling in from or coming in from today. I would ask that you change it to everyone, not just all panelists. Just change it to everyone or to all panelists and attendees so everybody can see the commentary. But yeah, I would love to see where you're calling in from. We got Silicon Valley, Mason, Michigan. I know a few other people here. I think Nebraska I see up there, New York, Michigan, Oakland, California, Kapolei, Hawaii, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Oh, that's the Podfather. Ann Arbor, Southern Indiana, Brighton. Me too. The Bay Area. So we got this like California, Hawaii, Michigan thing going on. Kind of interesting dynamic. So that's Michael Bug. Nick.
Nick Spade from Allentown, Pennsylvania, own and operate and self-manage 82 units, range from single families all the way up to a 22 unit, which has our office. And just excited to be here again.
Yeah, no, glad to have you. Thank you for coming back. Mr. Capron, let's hear from you, buddy.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Phil Capron, operating in coastal Virginia, so like Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, and I've got just under 350 multifamily units.
Beautiful. And Phil, you, to the extent you wish to talk about it, but you've been personally impacted.
I got something else.
What? Your COVID relief medication.
Possible still, right?
It says possible.
The result test.
Oh, but it's not.
Yeah, no, but when's the result test coming?
I don't know, man. Yeah, the government's completely overwhelmed with this shit, so I don't anticipate to see it anytime soon.
So tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, just curious, because I honestly haven't talked to somebody who is COVID-19 positive at this point or has demonstrated symptoms directly.
Well, in typical smart ass fashion, it means that you shouldn't buy multifamily real estate, because the last building we bought, I was hanging out with the seller who just came back from New Orleans and got it from her. So
she gave you a property and a disease.
Yeah. Not even like a good one.
Yeah.
This is going off the rails quick. I'm sorry.
It's all right. He's high on possible COVID meds. So.
Yeah. So for all the naysayers out here that are, saying it's a hoax or, it's being overblown, you don't want this, young, fit, relatively healthy, so I've got a mild to moderate case. You don't want this. Trust me.
Yeah,
So,
no, Josh Dorkin actually did a nice job. If you're face, I think we're both Facebook friends with him, of laying out like on like a 20-minute live video, like every day, and the symptomology and all that, because he's contracted it. And it was interesting to hear him go through it, like, day by day, what the symptoms were, what he felt, and he's pissed that he can't get tested and all that stuff. But it was interesting to listen to kind of what he had gone through. So yeah, it's real, right? It's impacting people. So, the goal here is of course to help on the economic side with the business, but, Phil, get kind of everybody getting to know you. People have been hanging out with us last few weeks. I thought it was appropriate just to throw that out there so we can all wish you better.
So I won't do a 20-minute Dorkin version, but he basically just narrated my last, I don't know, 8 to 10 days. I'm not sure exactly when it started, because being a guy, we don't tend to go to doctors or really think much when stuff's wrong. And even with all this going on, I just knew that at night I was getting chills and sweating through my sheets, and thought that was odd. Went to look for a thermometer, but they're all sold out. So, I never knew whether I had a fever or if I didn't. And then, a cough started up a couple days later, and wicked headache. I mean, that's one of the worst parts is the headache's absolutely brutal. And then a few days after that, tightness, a shortness of breath, lightheadedness, dizziness. And at that point, which is a couple days after I was informed that this contact of mine had tested positive, I said, I better go to get a test just to make sure that, if this is a thing, I can be away from everyone else. So,
yeah.
Went into the hospital, and, temperature is 100, blood pressure is way high, respiration's way high, pulse way high. But fortunately, my oxygenation, aka my lungs transferring the oxygen to my blood, is still really good, and that's what ends up really hurting people, killing people. So, they did all their tests. They did a chest X-ray, and that must have gone okay because they let me go. And so here I am a couple days later talking to you guys, and it's not fun. It's not fun, but if it's truly a 2-week timeline, I'm hoping that I'm toward the tail end of it here.
Love it. Yeah. Well, I'm glad. I hope you're at the tail end of it, and I'm glad you're not hospitalized, and really appreciative that you're jumping on. So no, good to have you here. So let's dive into this thing. I'm curious, and we've talked a bit, but for our folks out there, and feel free others to chime in on where you are with this, but what's it looking like? So I'll go back the other way. So Phil, what's it looking like from a rent-in perspective? It's April 5th. Tomorrow's the 6th, kind of like the 5th because the 5th is a Sunday. What is it looking like for you as far as rent collection? Good, bad, neutral?
I haven't talked to the managers from my entire portfolio, but the 100 unit that I'm sitting in, we've received about 75,000 out of 90,000. That's actually on where we should be at this point in the month. About 20% of people, 15-20% of people paying toward the end of the month, they're making a payment arrangement. So I can be exact what everything that's coming over the weekend tomorrow, but just back in the napkin, it looks like about 75 out of 90. So pretty respectable.
You're on pace. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Nick, what about you?
Yeah, actually pretty similar to Phil. We're at 72% collected right now, and I anticipate by late tomorrow it'll be just under 80%, and then probably up to 90% trickle in the rest of the week. I haven't contacted tenants yet that haven't paid, because the 6th is tomorrow. They technically have until midnight tonight. It's also a weird month because before we installed the drop box at our office, we'd always give one more extra day if the 5th fell on the weekend, just because we have an office they drop it off at. So it's one of those months that always annoys me that now I don't have to think about it anymore because we have the drop box. So that's one positive that came out of this. But we're basically on par with where we would be right now.
You are where you would be right now. Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. So you're tracking the way you would any other month at this point.
Correct.
Gotcha. All right, Mr. Bug, how about you?
I'll break it into the 2 segments. So single family, we're like 99%, which we kind of expected. We're just waiting for one rent check, but they told us they're going to be late, and it's coming. Multifamily, this is as of Friday, because that's all third party managed. We're just under 75%, so like 74%. Some of that was people that had just moved in and don't have auto transfer set up. So I would imagine by like Monday, Tuesday, when we clear all that up, we'll be in 80+%. So
yeah, I'll echo that. We're over 80% collected right now. And by tomorrow, I should have the rest of it, to be honest with you. I anticipate being 100% collected by the end of the day tomorrow. My portfolio isn't quite the size of these gentlemen, so there's something to be said for that. But yeah, I mean, it's not been I think what many might have expected to this point. And I have a theory with this, and I'm going to reference my day job. So at my day job, which is in insurance claims, Mondays and Tuesdays are rough days, right? That's, like if you're handling a claim, a lot of claims come in Monday, and then the appraisers get a ton of volume on Tuesday. And ever since this all happened, like when you don't feel well, and want to take the day off, it's usually one of those 2 days. It just happens to be that somebody's sick on one of those 2 days. No one is calling in sick right now, right? Everyone's coming to work. No one's taking time. Everyone's showing up. I think there's a sense when dad comes home mad, which is the economy crashing down. That's the parallel I'm making anyway, of people like, all of a sudden they're in church choir, in choir boy mode or choir girl mode, right? They kind of toe the line. They're doing what they've been trained to do their whole lives. Like pay your bill, be good. Don't talk back, right? You can imagine the dad coming home reference. Kids are wild in the house and they snap to attention when dad comes home mad, right? So I feel like it's a little bit of that happening right now. And I don't know, I kind of expect at least this month, maybe next month, that we may see a little bit of this. I'm just going to pay my rent, pay my mortgage. I'm not gonna, there's people out there that are not going to, and we're going to talk about that. But I'm saying, generally speaking, the broad scope of this is, maybe it's a belief in me that most people genuinely want to just, do the right thing. And those people in particular now are going to make sure that they're fully protected. I got a place to live. I'm going to pay the landlord, pay the mortgage, all that good stuff. And Nick, you said it when I brought this up the other day, like no one's spending money. Fair.
Yeah, bars are closed. If you go to happy hour Friday and Saturday, or just Friday, you're spending 40, 50, 60 bucks with appetizers, a couple drinks. And now you're spending $12.
Yeah, so, it's true. On Chipotle delivery.
Yeah.
Right.
And a couple Bud Lights at your house.
That's your happy hour. So yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. Like that's a dynamic maybe not factored in. And it's not to say, yeah, everything's going to be fine. All the panic is for no reason. Not at all. We'll see what May brings, but I think all of us expected something more in April, and maybe it's the fact that there's a check coming. Nick, you referenced at one point, like when people stopped working, it was like the 2 weeks of paycheck would come still up until April, so they could pay April. So maybe that's the case, but we'll see. The relief checks in May might play a role. Who knows? But I'm going to remain optimistic that rents get collected. But that's me. But what do you guys think? Has anything changed with your planning, going in? So you probably planned for less rent or less collection this month. That didn't happen. Is anything changing with, any of you jump in, and anything changing with what you're planning for after this month?
I think it depends initially on, I know tenants that we have been laid off. So I know that they're waiting on their PINs, but the majority of them did pay this month. So if that unemployment check takes a little while, and if it's not as big as they think it's going to be, and if the stimulus checks that they're getting take a little while, there might be kind of an overlap in May when that happens. So I'm optimistic, as same as you, Jamie, but I'm curious to see how this is going to play out. You mentioned about potentially delaying paying the taxes in time for the 2%, whatever it was in your county, 2% discount. Is this changing anything for you at this point or no? No, we still haven't paid, nor are intending to pay at the 2% tax rate right now. 2% break to 98%. So that's remaining the same, just because I can pay those in July. I'll know in July what's happening. So the amount of money that we'll save is minimal when I can have all that knowledge for July. It's 2% fee for that knowledge, right? Yeah, that's a good point. Mike, what about you? Anything changing with your, did I lose you, Mike?
Sorry, you cut out.
Oh, sorry about that.
Not really. Like, still holding off on any like maintenance other than emergency maintenance, just sort of preserving cash, just to see how it keeps playing out. We do have the option where I am to kick our property taxes down the road and utilities, like penalty free. So can sort of hoard some cash up that way just to see kind of what happens when we get into like May, June, July.
Do you think that, Nick, do you think that'll happen for you? Penalty free? I mean, I have to get into 2021 for that, right?
I think that they will. I think they're going to push out that there's going to be no penalties. So typically, if we don't pay by July 15th, there's a 10% penalty that gets kicked onto the city tax and the county tax. And I think that's just going to be penalty free for the year. I don't think they're going to push it into 2021. Just kind of how like the big banks right now, you can get forbearance on your mortgage, but at the end of 3 months, the full is due without penalty. That's going to be, I think that'll be pretty similar, especially in like the harder hit states. We have a lot of cases in Pennsylvania at this point. So I think we'll be pushing that, kind of like how Bug said.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, Michigan's interesting because Detroit Metro has been heavily hit. So if you're invested down there, more concerning than maybe if you're in some of the suburbs. What about you, Phil? Anything changing with your plans?
Sort of. This project we're doing is a reposition, so the plan was to non-renew a ton of leases. I might renew some, just until we can see. So basically delay the project, kick it off for a couple of months. We started with about 10 vacants. We've leased 3. We're going to be done with 5 of them by the end of this week, and then a couple of them are a little further behind. So I kind of want to see how those turn out before creating a lot more vacancy. If I am going to renew, though, I'm probably going to say, hey, look, no one's trying to move right now. Let's get a little closer to pro forma if I have to keep you in there for another year, or another options month to month, which might be a win-win for both me and the tenant.
Cool. How do your neighbors outside of the leasing unit? How do they like Dexter?
Well, they're having a party upstairs. There's got to be 15 people there.
Really?
Right now. And as Nick mentioned, it's the 5th. So there's a lot of people coming to the door and putting checks through. So that's what just happened.
Phil, there was a question about, and I'm sorry if you answered it, but on taxes, like you and Nick both articulated. Zach was asking the question.
It depends. I mean, look, if we got money, we're going to pay as normal. But like Nick said, we're going to, kick that can down the road a little bit. It's not like I don't intend to pay them. It's that I'm willing to finance those with, a little bit of a fee or whatever is charged in exchange for safety. Making sure I don't have to go in my pocket in, say, June or July.
That makes sense. Yeah, we've to your point, we had one tenant that was going to move out, and we kind of like, we want him to move. He's a good payer, but he just, smokes, and we don't want smoking and all that. And he's trying to smoke outside and all that, but he was ready to go end of March, and we kind of agreed, like, hey, if you just stay a month or two, not a problem, But I did just lease a unit this past weekend. Guy toured it, gave me a check, ready to go. So, I think there's still action out there, which is good. What about refinancing in this climate? What do you got? Anybody we've talked a little bit about it, but what are you doing, or what are your plans now, if anything, with refinancing in this climate? Phil, you want to start with that?
Wouldn't be in a rush. I think that when the dust settles, that rates will normalize once again. Right now, it's super. I mean, if you're up against a timeline with a hard money loan or something, do what you got to do. Or if that amount of cash is going to be critical to enjoying some of this volatility, then go for it. We executed a big one right before everything melted down. It was great. I'm working on one right now, but again, I'm just watching it. And kind of communicating with my broker to figure out if we're in a window that I'm comfortable in. If not, I'll just wait a little longer.
Makes sense. Nick, what do you think?
We just closed our 2 cash out refis on a 3 unit and an 8 unit. So that closed on Thursday. And the only thing that changed, they held it at 4.25, 25-year AM. Everything was the same except for the loan to value did drop to 75%, which I mentioned last week.
Yeah.
Right now, everything's backed up with the banks that I use, the community banks. So we're just waiting to see what happens. We're prepared to buy, but I'm kind of curious what's going to happen with interest rates later this summer, mid to late summer.
Makes sense. Okay. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, we got lots on the go. And it's just coincidence. Like, we had these planned, and this is where they were falling before all the COVID stuff started. So these are apartment projects that we did value add onto, and now we want to refinance and get our capital out. So the what this has changed is just it's slow. Like, everything is more drawn out because most banks, their primary priority is all these mortgage deferrals that are coming in. And so the refinances get shuffled to the back. So I'm just sort of banking on the fact that it's going to take a lot longer.
Mike, I got a question on your policy with the mortgage deferrals up there.
Okay.
In the US with the CARES Act that came through, if you take a mortgage deferral and it's a 90-day because it's a federally backed loan, you're not allowed to act on the tenant non-payment until the end of that deferral. Is that the same in Canada?
Not that I've heard. So we have like 6 major banks and then a bunch of community credit unions. And the catch is they're all still like, because this all hit them so fast, it's not super clear. They're all sort of adapting on the fly. I haven't heard that specifically though.
Okay.
Interesting. There's a conversation going on the side here that generating cash now from refi might not be a bad idea either if it's not too much of a hassle aside from the inability to get inside units for interior inspections. And the question was, how do they handle appraisals? Were you able to send them a video or an affidavit regarding the interiors? This kind of speaks to a question we got offline, guys, from somebody that emailed in one, and it was, where was it? Unable to go and look at the properties and not many photos are available. What steps or actions or underwriting guidelines would you recommend beginner investors or any investor take during this time? So this might be a Phil question, since I think this is more multifamily specific, maybe not, but Phil, and you've talked about this in the past, but I'm curious, like in the age of COVID, where, access to property is not a good idea, right? We don't want to bring appraisers and all that through properties and everything. If you're looking at a property to either refi and or acquire, what is this looking like? How are you? Is there any virtual way for you to do the due diligence?
No.
All right. So what are you doing?
Nothing.
You're doing financial upfront, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Yep, with contingencies out the wazoo. I've got one deal in process right now that I've already done the physical. So we're working on a little bit of a retrade on that one and seeing if we can still make it happen. But yeah, you shouldn't be walking units now. I was supposed to receive some 1031 money from a seller to do this next deal, and their buyer just backed out yesterday as they couldn't tour all the units. So, I think everyone's kind of on pause for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah. The question on how is, go ahead, Nick.
For the ones I went through with the refinances, the single family home that was occupied, they allowed a drive-by. And I had another house that I'm selling that they're doing it was vacant. So they went in, there's new guidelines as well for the appraisals in our area, where they have to wear gloves. The house has to be vacant. The homeowner has to approve that they're coming in, but they're still letting people in for the appraisals because that's falling under title work, and title work is essential for where we are. So.
Yeah. I mean, for a single family, I'm refinancing my house, thankfully locked before all this went down. And the appraiser came a week ago. I mean, masked up, gloves. She didn't, I opened every door, like she came through. But yeah, I think there's some allowance for that. They haven't told appraisers to go virtual completely yet, at least not in my state. But on the multifamily side, to Phil's point, I don't know that bringing somebody in from the outside right now is the best course. It's probably better just to hold on a refi or an appraisal. Or like Phil said, if you're acquiring a property, kick the physical due diligence out, get a longer term on the contract, put contingencies in place so that you can do this in hopefully May or June as opposed to right now. Yeah, you mentioned 1031 a second ago, Phil. I want to piggyback on that. Nick, what are your thoughts, right? You know, I'm just curious in this climate, because you work quite a bit with these, I believe. In this climate, is there anything to be considered, any considerations that you feel need to be made around 1031s?
So I'm in a 1031 right now. I have my sale property under agreement to close on the 13th of April, and I have 2 purchases that I have under agreement as well to close middle of May. Thankfully, I have those under agreement because there hasn't been anything come through that says that the 45-day identification period is lengthened, which I think that actually should be lengthened to 90 days or 135 days, whatever, and then 6 months to close on that. But that hasn't come through yet. So thankfully we're under agreement and everything's moving as it should be. But I foresee something coming through that extends that period.
It says, I was also doing a new investment purchase, 1031 replacement identification period ended. Others extended this past Friday. But since it's new construction in an area that isn't shut down, hoping that it will go through. Is there any talk of it being extended? Is that anywhere?
I haven't seen it, but it should be. I don't see why everything's shut down.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just wasn't sure if there was any discussion out there right now. It is not lengthened, but Pasco letter just said people are pushing Mnuchin to extend the 1031 identification period, but it hasn't happened. Okay, so there's some noise out there about it, it seems like. So, okay, that makes sense. There was another question that came through about tenants that you can't currently evict, and we were chatting about this a little bit earlier. Us and more. But if you got somebody that's a tenant right now that, you know, is refusing to pay or isn't paying or whatever, and you can't evict, what tactics, how are you treating that situation? Mike, is it the same thing up in Canada? Can't evict right now?
Currently it is. They put that on maybe 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago.
So what does that look like? If you've got a tenant that's saying, yeah, hey, you can't, nanny poo poo, you can't catch me kind of thing, and is playing games around it, or, you know, just saying, I can't pay you, I won't pay you, you can't evict me anyway. What are you doing with people like that?
Well, luckily we have none of those, like, knock on wood. So I guess if we did have that, it would go back to like, okay, well, what kind of tenant were they sort of before all of this happened? If they were a good tenant and they're just falling on hard times, I would probably try to work with them as best as we can. And if they were a bit of a pain in the butt before, and now they're just being more of a pain in the butt, I mean, there's not a tremendous amount we can do other than follow all the like legal steps, fill out all the proper paperwork so that when this does end, we can, you know, have them go on record, and it'll just kind of use that sort of threat that things are going to be a lot more difficult for them when this ends if they want to play hardball.
Do you do it with like a Clint Eastwood voice?
I try to as best as I can, but I'm not very intimidating. So
with the Canadian accent like looped into it?
Yeah.
All right. Nick, what about you?
Hey, just go and take the toilet off. I'm kidding. We actually have a tenant that we were filing for possession the day that they closed the courts. So they're staying for free right now. They're great. But I do agree with what Bug said. The tenants that historically have been great, you know, most of them, the majority are great tenants, and I'm not worried about them. They're going to have payment plans. They're going to have options. They're going to be able to reimburse their security deposit. There's a lot of things you can do for the good tenants, but we have, I think it's 2. Yeah, it's 2 now that are just staying, and the balances are just going to continue to grow. But the day the court's open, possession will be filed. Court will be filed for the one that's under eviction. So it sucks, but it's part of the game. We did file for the disaster loan grant, the $10,000 grant, and I filed it through rent being lost. So it's something to look into if you have an LLC, the EIDL grant. And there's a section there to put where you have lost rent. I calculated kind of a balance of what we anticipate losing because the court's being closed. I'm just kind of seeing how the government responds.
That's a grant, not a loan. It sounds
Correct.
like, right?
10,000 non-refundable. I'm sorry.
Non-reimbursable.
Yeah.
Or no need to reimburse.
Yeah, no, it's not a loan. It's a grant. You don't have to pay it back.
Okay.
But I mean, I can only imagine the amount of applications they've gotten. I personally know people that have applied for like 20 of them. So
Is there any anticipation that courts are going to be like, when this opens up and you can file evictions again, that courts are going to, be sensitive to the timing of it, or no? To the tenant, I mean.
legally they can't. I don't think. I mean, it's the judges. The judge was going to. There's certain things the judge can do, and there's certain things the judge cannot do. They can look at case law to make prior decisions, but there's nothing to base this off of. They can try and mediate, but they can waive your late fees. But at the end of the day, if a tenant was there not paying, and I'm only evicting 2 bad tenants. I'm not going to court for the people that I have payment plans with. And be careful with that, because if you have a payment plan, you can't take them to court, or you won't do well in court with a payment plan in effect. So be careful if you're going to put in payment plans. Just make sure they're good tenants. But I'm only planning on going to the 2 people I would have gone to court for anyways.
Makes
so I don't
sense.
think there's going to be a lot of, like, I was in court for both these prior to. It's not like this caused it.
Okay. Phil, what about you? Tenants that you can't evict right now. Any tips on handling?
The carrot is gone. When the fog lifts, it is straight stick. And I'm making it very clear that I will freaking bury them and spend extra money to make sure that this haunts them forever.
That's in writing too, right?
Something like that. So I'll come cough on their door.
I was just gonna make that joke.
Yeah, somebody in the live said, "Hey, Bill, you okay? Cough, cough." What's that?
I said, it's not funny. It sucks.
No, somebody said coffee. They didn't see this part of it where we, for folks that are wondering, Phil is, he has medication for likely being COVID-19 positive. He has every symptom essentially. And thankfully it sounds like he's on the flip side, but still, as you can tell, not feeling great. Somebody mentioned,
I'm not a lawman, but Spade, I might have a workaround to your payment plan. We got a couple that were working payment plans, but I said on the last call that I'm seeking to refinance leases. If we refinance the lease, then the old one dies and the new one is in full effect. So I think that alleviates your payment plan issue. What say you, layperson Nick Spade?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It makes sense. So I don't know. I don't know if that's going to fly or if it's not, but that's my intention by doing that, and also getting closer to the pro forma rents on these repositions for our exit.
Yeah, I think it works out really well for that for you.
saw a question. Oh, here it is. Will you still send them a pay or vacate notice, but without the vacate?
Yes, I've sent letters already to tenants that I have one tenant that pays middle of the month because of a previous landlord's terrible judgment. And we dropped off a letter like we normally would. It just doesn't say that we're going to evict them because it's just an open thread at that point. Empathizing with them is better and trying to let them know, like, hey, you still need to pay your rent.
Yeah. The bottom line is people are cool, be cool. People aren't cool, then do everything that you're entitled to within the scope of the law. Y'all hear these people above me?
I do. I did just hear a thump.
The leasing agent texted and was like, hey, I got a complaint about building 7. Is there loud music? I'm like, oh yeah, it's a full-on party. And she's like, what do you want to do about it? I was like, you want me to go cough on him? No, I'm kidding. All right, that joke's played out. Jamie, you're the stand-up comedian. You need to help me with my COVID material.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. We gotta work through. Yeah, we got a whole COVID set.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Too soon. It's too soon.
Well, because it's like, it's that thing where like, well, you're impacted, so you could say it, but you know what I mean?
That's right.
But anyway, here's a question that came up.
Early adopter here. I'm a trendsetter.
You are, always have been.
See how many of you follow my lead over the coming weeks.
Hey, so a question popped up in the live stream about mailing, like yellow letter campaigns. Should they still be or not? We talked about this a month ago, and it was like, I think you guys were saying, hey, hold for now until about now, I want to say. Was that true? Like, are you guys feeling like with what we know now, it's time to start marketing again, or no?
I would, but I don't know. I'll defer to these guys they're grinding a little harder in the acquisition space.
So I originally said wait until now. I still think sending them now would be a good idea. There's people that aren't going to want to deal with what's coming in the next couple months. Just the evictions. We're getting leads still on our letters that we sent a couple weeks ago. Just make sure you're talking to them even more extensively and vetting the lead before you obviously go out and look at the properties, just 'cause you don't want to disturb tenants. But I wore a mask when I was out and just was conscious of what I was touching, walked in quickly, in and out. I mean, we usually buy buildings just looking at the basements and the top floor. So make sure the roof's not caving in. Everything else is pretty much the same in our area, but I would send the letters out and I would see what kind of leads come in and still buy. I mean, as long as you have a good bank. Community banks are the most flexible right now. So just staying in the smaller community banks is where the lending will be easier to get through.
Explain that a little bit.
So they're more flexible. They always have been. They didn't come back at me for interest rates, which I know, Phil, they came back for you, right?
Well, it wasn't a community bank, right? Was it?
Yeah, I know there was a larger bank. So that's what I'm saying. Community banks are kind of more on their word with prior agreements. They changed the loan to value, but that didn't impact the loan. So I think they knew that they could do that without annoying me. They're also allowing, compared to Bank of America, which is giving the 3-month forbearance to the owners of the mortgages, and then having a balloon payment at the end of 3 months, the community banks, both of the ones I deal with, are allowing you to take a 3-month forbearance if you can show that you were impacted, and then they're tacking it onto the back end of the loan. So just like basically moving the loan and adding on the interest that would have accrued. So that's a lot more flexible with someone that's actually hurting from this. We chose not to take that option just because we're where we need to be. So.
All right, these are flying in now, so I'm going to try to get all of these. But Mike, I want to hear about you marketing. Are you doing any marketing? I know it's Canada, so it's like light yellow letters, right?
Yeah, different shade of yellow.
It's a different shade of yellow, like 75% of the yellow.
Yeah. We haven't sent out any new batches recently, but I am working kind of the pipeline, but in a different way, more of a like, sort of seeing if anyone needs any support. Because I'm targeting multifamily buildings. A lot of the owners aren't local. They don't live here. So that's more like building my brand up, I guess. And then when the time is right, or whenever they are looking to sell, I just want to be the first person they call.
Okay, that makes sense. Hey, Nick, real quick, somebody asked the name of that grant, EIDL?
Yeah, I'll find the link and I will post it in the chat.
Perfect. So yeah, EIDL grant for, I can't remember where that question came from, but all right, there's a couple of questions relative to the tenant issue. So one question was, I like the way this is worded. Can you waive late fees for the quote unquote cool tenants, but stick to the late fees to the not cool tenants? Brayden, I love that question. Thank you for that. And I get his point. Like, can you be picky and choosy with how you manage late fees or whatever? So whoever wants to take that first.
So it's a very in-depth question. If you waive a late fee from a legal perspective, of my knowledge of PA law, because I'm a broker and I have a property management company for a third party as well, you run the risk of waiving one late fee for someone and say they're 6 feet tall, but then you deny a late fee for someone that's 5'7", and that's obviously not a parameter that's going to work. But the person that you did not waive is going to say that you discriminated against them, or can if they find out about the other option. So with late fees in general, you need to be as consistent and as strict as possible per your criteria. Within that criteria, we have that if you contact us and let us know that you're getting paid on the 6th, which is a Friday, and Thursday's the 5th, in that situation, as long as you contacted me and you are proactive, we will likely waive the late fee. I mean, we're humans, right? We want to help people. I don't want to take $50, $75 from someone that's proactive and a good tenant and paying on time, versus the person that doesn't respond to you, loses their phone, and it's the 12th and you drop a letter off and then 3 days later they finally pay. That's a different situation. But because of the current atmosphere with everything happening, I would decide what you're going to do and stick to it. We decided to waive late fees this month. Other people I know have decided to waive late fees until the 15th of this month, give them an extra 10 days. We haven't put anything in writing, but anyone that's contacted me, I said there's no late fees, so I might push it to like the 20th but right now it's just waiving it. I'm getting the EIDL thing right now, so give me a second.
No problem. Anybody else? I mean, I think it's pretty well said. Phil, do you have anything to add to that from your perspective? Late fees, cool tenants, not cool tenants?
Our buddy Nick hit the nail on the head. You got to treat people equally. Our buddy Andrew Cushman actually went the other way with it and said if you had your rent in on time, he'd give you a $50 grocery card or something like that to help out. So
Another way of doing it. Mr. Bug, any thoughts on it in addition?
Nothing new really to add. We have third party in place, so I don't have to deal with it directly like Nick does, but Nick.
Gotcha. All right. Here's a quick question in the Q&A tab. What happens to the bad tenants who don't pay their utilities and or water during this period? Does it fall on the owner after they get evicted? Did I lose you guys? No.
No, sorry, I was responding.
No, it's okay. My knowledge of this is no, we don't. Like they're saying if a tenant doesn't pay their utility bill and then gets evicted, does it come back to the owner? In my experience, that would be no. Like the tenant, it's in their name, it's their account. The utility is going to go after them and hold and go with collections against them, not against the owner of the building.
Other than water, in some counties, you can put the water in the tenant's name, but that's a utility that can go with the property.
I pay water on all my property, so I don't know. Yeah.
So we can put it in the tenant's name, but we still sign a legal agreement that although it's in their name, it's our responsibility. I think a lot of that comes from the water sources originally being owned by the cities and counties. So they want to be able to get their money versus the utility companies are private companies. So even if your water is bought out by a private company, it still remains the same.
Makes sense. All right. Here's a question. What about choosing a new tenant in this current situation? Any suggestions, like maybe setting a higher deposit amount with the hope of finding someone with cash reserves, hopefully not living on? I'll actually start with this. That's exactly what happened to me yesterday when I met with or Friday when I met with a prospective tenant and they're choosing to lease the apartment. In any other scenario, great income, great tenant, but right now they're furloughed, they're laid off, so they don't have income. We actually I sought these guys' advice, and it was what I'm doing is first and last month. So I'm charging 2 months of rent essentially up front, plus the deposit, just to have a little bit more cushion, if you will, if they don't get back to work as soon as possible. And the other part was good screening. So I called the boss, the owner of the company that this person worked for, and very specific, like, did they work? Yes. Are they working right now? No, we're kind of shut down. We're not essential. Cool. What's their status? Oh, no, they're coming back. I need that guy back. He's doing great. We have this project. And then when I talked to the prospective tenant, his story was almost the exact same. So it just sort of checked out. So a little bit of due diligence as far as, the verbal work, if you will, but to protect financially, get an extra month's rent, that and or maybe along with that, get proof of funds if somebody's got some money sitting in an account. That's what I would do. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think that getting first and last months and extra money or a double security deposit is something that's really good, especially if you're renting to someone now that's has the chance of losing their job.
Gotcha. Yeah. Ivan said I'm hating on Canadians, and I apologize, Ivan. My bad. I do it once a week.
Yeah, he does it all the time.
Everything is just 3/4 of whatever it is here. So it's like if Mike gets a haircut, his hair, only like 3/4 of his hair is actually cut versus an American haircut. Like no matter what it is.
Everything's smaller.
Everything is 3/4. There's a conversion rate. There's got to be with everything. Let's see if there's any other questions that popped in here. There was a question I got, and I think we answered this. This was actually texted to me. And the question is, let's see, what advice do they have for a seller regarding should they execute a purchase agreement now for a fair value with a condition from buyer that the due diligence period will start when the stay-at-home is lifted or take market offers after stay is lifted? Lock it up now with a purchase agreement versus market offers later. I would lock it up now and put in contingencies and everything else for due diligence later or whatever. I mean, I think you have to have a lot of flexibility in the contract, but if you can get a price that works now, go for it. The flip of that is that price may actually be advantageous in 4 weeks. Like that price may come down, more than like market offers going up, that price may come down. Maybe that's what is being asked. But I would say if you got a price that you think is really, really good long-term and you can lock up the asset, absolutely get the contract signed. I think all of you guys agree with that, correct? All right, cool. Stop hating on Canadians. I'm done hating on Canadians. So we
Yes.
got like 15 minutes left. I wanna throw a couple things at you guys. So first is let's do a quick round of what if, and I think I got to all the questions over here. There's a question about raising rents in this environment for leases that are up soon. I have an opinion on that. I don't know what you guys think.
Oof. Go first.
Me? I'll put it this, I'll speak for my portfolio. There are rents in my portfolio that when I acquired the property were significantly below market. And when we raised them, they were to a level that is still pretty good as far as below market. Like they're still below market to a high degree. The tenant base is mostly fixed income, Social Security, older, that kind of thing. For me to go from current rent up $20 on lease renewal, yeah, I'm going to do that. Because again, there's not as if this environment isn't impacting their income. They're getting the same income and they get the same increase in income, whatever that is every year from their Social Security check. And my rents are still below market. Now, the unit that I just marketed and rented, full market is $820. I took it down to $795, which was previously full market. Does that make sense? Like the last round of leases were $795. This round was going to be $820. If not for COVID, I brought those down to $795. And I had another at market lease from a year ago after we rehabbed a unit that I renewed at the same rent. So I think that you have to look at the individual situation to determine whether or not it makes sense to raise rents. On the folks that are paying below market with a fixed income, to me, it's business as usual. I'm raising rents, $20, whatever it is per year, just to kind of 2-3%. That's my take. Maybe Nick or Phil or Mike, you're going to tell me I'm nuts.
I think raising it slightly is a good option. I wouldn't make any big moves just because if you can't lease the property, you're going to lose more money. You can transfer it there. If it's a year lease renewal, transfer it to a month-to-month lease. And then once this is all done, then send in your rent increase to where you want it to be.
That's fair. Phil, what do you think?
I don't think people are going to want to move right now if they can avoid it. So, I wouldn't use this as a opportunity to leverage people that are going through a bad situation. But I also wouldn't completely sacrifice your business goals. That's why I mentioned that, for a few of my 9 that are, going to renew here in April, that I was going to, potentially put them month to month or, see if we could find a happy medium between pro forma and where they are to keep them in place. I think that benefits both parties.
How about you, Mike?
The closest example I have is the apartments we bought at the end of last year, significantly under rent, and we issued rental increase notices then. The rules in my province, they needed at least 6 months notice, so those don't kick in for about a month. So those will be kicking in just coincidentally during COVID now, and we're letting that fly because we're not gouging them. We're just moving them to where rents should have been all along because they were significantly below rent.
6 months.
I know. That's crazy. That is crazy.
Conversion.
Yeah. And there's somebody, I think Braden may have said, if you're in a small area, you might want to be careful with your reputation by raising rents. I completely agree. I think that there's not a right answer to this. And like I said, when I was talking about mine, like specific to me, there's certain scenarios where as leases come up, which I don't have one coming up for 90 days or so, which, might be beyond this anyway, but even still fixed income, below market rent still, yeah, I'm probably going to go with the increase, small increase, but yeah, you have to think about a lot of different factors for you. And even if you just want to, like, you may not feel good doing it, and that's okay. Right. Whatever you think is best for you is what you do in that regard. All right. So what if, I want to do a quick round of what ifs here, if we could. So the first question is a sort of like, if you're in this situation, what if this was you? What would you be doing right now? How would you be thinking, preparing, or whatever? So if you are a new investor, which we have some on here, new investor, that could mean brand new, or yeah, I got a single family or a duplex that I rent out. I kind of have one property, but a new or fairly new investor. What if you're that person? What do you do? What are you doing right now? How are you preparing, or how are you, spending your time right now? Mike, you want to start with this one?
Sure. What came to my mind was be patient. You know, if you're a new investor, sometimes you're really antsy to get that first deal. And I think right now you'll make money by holding tight, being patient, and letting things play out. Because I think some really good deals will surface in time. So unless it's an absolute home run that just happens to be your first deal you analyze, I would be waiting for that, for those great deals.
What about you, Nick?
I think because it's newer and you're in a situation where it can't get worse than it was prior to COVID, as far as like the prices and the challenge of finding deals. So if you wait another 2 months, I think there's going to be more deals, or at least more properties available in the multifamily market or even the single family home market. So waiting and kind of sharpening your tools right now, reading more books while you're at home, hopefully would be more beneficial than jumping into a challenging situation that's going to be very time intensive in a market that is volatile.
I like it. Phil, what say you? New investor.
Ditto. Spend more time on education and maybe reaching out to some brokers, because they're not going to be able to transact much. See if you could do a Zoom call with them or a phone call. And,
Build, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You should be building your base. There's not going to be much happening in the next at least 3 months, the way that I see it.
Okay. And I'm going to go to you, Phil, for the start of this one, but I think you all hit the nail on the head. I think just spending time, like I see people come into the different groups that, introduce themselves by saying, yeah, hey, I'm excited. I'm a new investor. I set a goal to close on a property in the next 30 days. And it's like,
I love that. I do. I love that. And so it sucks for us to sit here and tell people not to do the thing that I'm always telling them to do.
Right.
But yeah, the world just totally changed.
That's it. That's what I was going to say. The same thing. Like I hate feeling like I don't want to squash that enthusiasm, because we've all been new at this. We've all bought our first property. We've all been excited about it. But at the same time, I hope that, they can be, hey, listen, keep that energy up, get ready to maybe make offers in 30 days or 45 days, on your first property to close 30 days after that or whatever. But yeah, just something to be mindful of over the next 30, 45 days. There's, this might be a deep breath point, get your education. If I even think somebody asked about that.
There's a lot of unknowns right now. If you buy a property and it goes vacant, you're going to need more reserves. And if typically you're supposed to hold 3 to 6 months, and now you might need 6 to 9 months. So do you want to buy a property and then spend 3 months of savings on your new mortgage when it's an unknown environment? You can't rent it out as quickly. Some places you can't rent it out. So, and
agreed.
Typically inherited tenants are the worst tenants, no matter what. They're always just terrible.
I'm going to say 100% agree with that. Like, I don't think I've had a situation that's like, oh, actually, this was a pretty good inherited tenant. I actually don't think I've had one.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I have had one building that we bought 3 years ago still has the same tenants in it for 3 years.
Wow.
So only one building has ever been good. And the rest are like, you buy it and you're like, holy shit, this is why they sold.
Yeah, makes sense. Phil, how about if you're somebody who has some property but wants to step up into multi? Any different advice on that?
Just think you're on hold. Keep double down with the education and the relationships, and make sure that you've got a viable team. Because it's I see it fairly often that people will actually contract a reasonably good deal, but they can't get it to the finish line because they don't have their puzzle pieces in line.
Yeah, I would even, so on that side of it, get some good analysis software. And hey, I'm going to plug this Wednesday night. We're going to have David Tupin, your boy there, Phil, on 8:30 p.m. Eastern on right here, in a webinar style format. And he's going to be doing a deal analysis. So I got questions already for him, little things that he may look at, just really, fine tuning how you analyze property. And we'll see what he says about in this environment specifically. Like, we're getting him at a different time than any other time in his career. And I wonder what he's doing differently than maybe he's doing now. But that's one way to kind of level up your education on this. Mike, you're on the multi side, larger multi. You have some, what about you? Anything that you would suggest other than what's been talked about for a new multifamily investor?
doubling down on what Phil said with relationships. So I'm just spending as much time as I can building and strengthening the relationships with my potential money partners.
Okay. Nick, you want to take this question? I like this. If a seller shows rents coming in for April, May, do you think there is still leverage to point to COVID as increased risk to renegotiate price?
So I'm involved in 2 transactions right now to close. I think there is an opportunity in one of those transactions to negotiate because it's a owner that has 1 property. The other purchases from an owner that has 70 units. So he doesn't care if he sells it. I'm in a 1031 and I really like the area. So I'm paying probably 10% below market for that one, but that's basically the realtor fees. So it's specific to the property. I think you do have an opportunity there, but it's also, you're going to have to know the seller, know your situation. And typically sellers want to sell, especially if it's a deal, there's going to be some type of aggravation with the property. So they want it gone, and 10 grand might not be that big depending on the price. I mean, it's very dependent on the property.
Okay. All right. We only got a couple minutes left here. I want to go around real quick and get from you guys how this has changed to this point. Like what have you sort of stepped back and looked at your business and said, okay, I'm going to do this different. What is that, if anything, but how has this changed your approach as an investor? So let me start with Phil.
I mean, I've been pretty consistent saying that if I can leverage the fear for a great deal right now, a lot of contingencies, I'll do that. Other than that, and if that opportunity doesn't come along, I'm sort of putting my pencil down for the time being. Getting more properties at this point shouldn't be the focus for me. It should be making sure that the ones that I have, the 350 that I have, are operating optimally during this tough time. And that's more than a full-time job in itself. So I think that's where my time is going to be best spent for the short term here.
Very good. Nick.
So I've had the opportunity to kind of look at the business from a day-to-day operations standpoint without the day-to-day operations actually going, because everything's stopped. So there's a lot of things that we have streamlined. I've looked into Appfolio. Our micro goals, like our small operational goals, are stopped, so we can look at them and say, hey, what was effective? What wasn't effective? Do we like not having the office open? So I think we're gonna operate differently after all of this from a micro level. Fortunately, macro level, with all our goals and property purchases and sales and refinances, has all continued, right? So for us, I'm gonna probably start taking more security deposits, as you had said previously with yours, Jamie. That doesn't ever hurt. We have to give it back after a year for PA law, but probably more security deposits, streamline our daily operations, and kind of take everything more virtual than we have previously, which is good. I think that's a good opportunity, an area that we wanted to go anyways.
I love it. How about you, Mike? What's changing for you is how you approach your business.
Yeah. So for me, my big takeaway is I am going to likely lower the loan to value ratio that I run my portfolio at, right? So I'm 35, I'm in like growth phase, and I kind of was being pretty aggressive trying to acquire units. And with this, I think I'm going to maybe pull the throttle back a little bit on sheer number of units and just run them at a lower loan to value and have higher cash flows, just for when the next COVID, whatever that looks like, shows up, just have more buffer. And then for potential new real estate business ventures, I don't even know if I've mentioned this to you guys or not, but I've been wanting to get into the commercial space, most specifically commercial buildings that house veterinary clinics. And I'm thinking there's going to be some incredible opportunities because the commercial space is just shifting so much. And so I think it's going to be kind of time to move into that next phase of my portfolio during this.
Very cool.
That's interesting. You guys looking at any different asset classes as a result of this, Nick and Phil?
For me, it's only reiterating how much I love residential property.
Yeah. No, I on the multifamily side, I feel like it always wins. I feel like, not like, nothing's winning per se, but I feel like it's always just a great place to be at the end of the day. Like, it's the one asset class that just seems the most stable through it all, but who knows? I could say for me, it's kind of a simple lesson, but we talked about this a little bit. It's a model of like revenue versus profitability and being more protective of the profitability side of things. Like kind of what you were just saying, like you're running lean because you're growing, you're trying to generate, more units, more revenue, so on and so forth. But as you look at some of the actions of people that are playing big time with big revenue models, right? Their whole entire business model is how can I get as much possible revenue in? They immediately had to cut and run the moment that this thing turned, right? They were cutting staff, cutting people, this, that, and the other. And for me, it's a reminder of, even in the best of times, and maybe Nick, you were getting to this, like the micro stuff, but the little things matter, right? So, where are your fees? These little fees, yeah, it's whatever. How do you eliminate those? How do you maximize your profitability? In a smart way. I'm not saying be a slumlord, but how do you maximize your profitability so that you can, make sure that you're well reserved to sustain you through something like this, right? Because who knows what the next thing is? There could be a repeat of this in the fall. Who knows, right? So from that perspective, it's a great reminder that revenue is great, but it's the old adage of it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And that's I think that's what this is for me. It's not necessarily a change, but more of a reminder on my business model. Like some of that stuff that I haven't been as tight on, I got to tighten up on, just make sure I'm every I dotted and every T crossed. So that's kind of my take on it. But yeah, guys, this has been cool. And for all of you out there that have attended, or if you're watching this after the fact, all of these 4 sessions are all available on youtube.com/multifamily and more. Would love for you to subscribe so that you can get this and other information. We've got a great quick hits playlist so you can get little bites and then from there choose what you want to dive into. But there is 4 hours worth of what to do in this crisis from guys that are doing it that is available to you. So consider this your reference guide, these 4 weeks. Guys, any last parting words?
Stay positive. Still.
In the case of Corona, stay negative.
Stay. Look at Phil. That's okay. We got it in the last minute. It was naked leverage, week 1, right? It was, what was it last week?
Refinance leases.
Refinancing leases, and now it's stay negative from COVID. I love it, Phil. You just one-linering us to death.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, any last parting words?
I'll just piggyback what you said, Jamie. Maybe now's a good time looking at like why are people doing it, like the why real estate. I know that's a bit cliche, but it's a great time to evaluate where you're going and what you want out of your real estate.
It's a great point. That's actually, I'll give you 100% points for that one, not 75.
Not even so. Oh wow,
100%. You get a full American set.
Well, I need 125 points to convert to 100.
Good point. So I did give you only 75 points because I gave you 100. It's messed up. I was messing with you when I didn't even want to mess with you. To all of you that are watching, thank you so much. Phil, thanks for roughing this out too, brother. I appreciate it. Thanks to all of you for coming on tonight. And tell your friends about it. Refer these videos over. I'd appreciate you getting it out there. I think these are helpful. And it's just been fun hanging out with you guys and all of these guys, even though we've been hanging out a lot lately. So, all right, guys, have a great night. Thanks everybody. And we'll see you soon.